Well, our top story this morning, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is expected to arrive in Israel in the next few moments as part of a diplomatic mission amid growing concerns over the conflict. President Biden is expected to spend part of today in Tel Aviv for talks with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to try and help the safe release of hostages held by Hamas and to ease the growing humanitarian crisis in the Middle East.
President Biden was then expected to travel on to Jordan for talks about accelerating humanitarian assistance to Gaza. However, this part of his visit has been cancelled after the strike on that hospital in Gaza City, which Palestinian officials blamed on Israel, but Israel has this morning blamed on the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group.
Well, as President Biden left Washington, D.C. last night, his White House spokesperson John Kirby told gathered reporters that Mr. Biden will pose tough questions in his meetings with Israeli leaders.
Biden says he was outraged by the explosion at a Gaza hospital that potentially killed hundreds of people and stated he directed his national security team to gather information about exactly what has happened.
Well, we can speak now to the United States political analyst, Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, who joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you. Some pretty big developments in the last hour, just hearing from the Israeli Defense Force, quite comprehensively denying any involvement in the strike on a hospital and even questioning the numbers of casualties. Of course, one of the first casualties in any war is always the truth. It's really important to get independent verification in any of this, and all eyes, frankly, on the United States. Do you think that President Biden can provide that in this hour of crisis?
That he can provide it? My understanding is that they can check the DNA of the bombs. And so based on that, then we'll get the true answer of whether it came from Hamas or Israel.
And how important is that to the situation as we face it today? Does it change the American support of Israel if it is found to have been in any way the work of the IDF?
It won't change the support of Israel, but then hopefully the head of Jordan and Egypt and Abbas will reconvene the meeting. I can understand why they canceled it. Netanyahu had invited Biden in 2021 to come over. So the fact that he's coming over for this is really significant.
Could he have done anything else? Of course, there's much criticism of Biden back at home in the United States as being perhaps not as on top of issues as some of his predecessors, perhaps someone who calls fewer press conferences, is less visible, is less active as a president, perhaps due to his age. Is this not just a moment to deal with serious crises in the Middle East, but also to prove his mettle as a world leader?
Well, I don't think it's his age. I think it's his memory that has something to do with it. I'm really against when people say someone's too old or the age, but he's got some memory problems and he needs some cheat sheets. But former Secretary of State Gates said that Joe Biden never made a right foreign policy decision in his life. And when that is hanging over him, I'm very nervous about it. I really am, because he has to be at his best for this. The respect for the U.S. by other countries is just not there. Blinken was to have a meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, and he showed up, he waited hours, and Mohammed bin Salman didn't show up till the next morning. That is a high insult to our Secretary of State. I don't know if there are going to be other reactions like that to Biden.
Well, I mean, the drawbridge has been pulled up, metaphorically, by the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, saying he doesn't even want to meet him. I mean, there could be no clearer message, frankly, that they see Israel as being in some way involved in this strike on the hospital, and they're not prepared to talk to the United States.
Well, that's exactly true. And again, we don't know who's responsible, but I can understand the position that they take. If he doesn't handle this well enough, what I'm really worried about is all the other Arab nations that will come in and will support Hamas. And that is not a good thing for the world at all.
So a lot is riding on what could just be one meeting, what could be a series of meetings. After all, if perhaps more individuals, organisations come out and verify further what has happened in Gaza overnight, if it does appear to be the case that this was actually a rocket fired from Gaza rather than from Israel that caused this mess, it could be that some of these meetings are back on. President Biden could turn this around. What would a successful visit look like? Well, a successful visit would, number one, he would let all the humanitarian aid in. Two, what would really be ideal, but you never have this happen with Hamas, is to evacuate the people so that there are far less casualties. But Hamas's strategy is to use people as deterrents.
Well, is that fair? I mean, at the moment, Egypt has said they don't want civilian refugees, and neither does Jordan. So, you know, it's not just Hamas saying that they won't let civilians out. The civilians haven't got anywhere to go at this point, apart from those who are lucky enough to hold dual citizenship, some of which have left via sea. But at the moment, there's no land exit and certainly no air exit from the Strip.
Well, I think what's fascinating is that the Arab nations don't want the Gazans. And they're very explicit about that. So it really is a very tough situation when you don't want to kill people, but then the Palestinians, I mean, the Palestinian Authority is considered it's recognized internationally. And so are the Palestinians that are not part of the Gazans, how are they protected? And are they even letting the Gazans come over to the Palestinian side there?
OK, Jan Halper-Hayes, fascinating to talk to you this morning as we await the arrival of President Biden in Israel. Thank you very much.